What's up, people? You know who it is. Nate, the lawyer. I'm trying to fix my mic. You know, I'm always a mess. How's everybody doing out there? What's going on? And I got a new member. Oh, Roast Worthy. Thank you for becoming a member of the channel. Thank you so much. You know I need the help. Let me fix this camera. I feel like I'm in a bizarre one. My camera's feel like it's twisted. So, as you guys know, my name is Nate the Lawyer, and every Wednesday, welcome to the Wednesday show. This is going to be a phenomenal show because now we have a third guest, a third lawyer in the bunch. So I know, hopefully, you guys will be happy to hear us talk about the Floyd case. We're going to be talking about a lot of interesting stuff today. Let me pick it up because I have. Let me see. I got to go back and pick my list. But we are going to be talking about the Floyd case. We're going to be talking about the Atlanta spa shooting. We are going to be talking about everything hot today. Oh, it's good to see you, Natalie, Kate Compton. What's going on? It's always good to see you. All my favorites are here. What's up, people? No love in the chat right now. Jeopardy music. I did not play any Jeopardy music, BMG. But thank you anyway. Oh, you look marvelous in orange. You know what, Alexa, turn Nate B's lamp orange. That's for you, Kate. Okay. That's for you. Boom. You see that? The magic of Alexa right there. So let me bring in my guest. First, you know him, you love him. This is my brother from another mother on civil law. Boom.
Boom, yeah. Boom, yeah. It's another great week in law. The world continues to come apart, and it's up to us, the lawyers, to keep it together.
Oh, Kurt, you know, this week has been crazy.
Yes. It's you could everyone just calm down and maybe no one break a law or infringe on someone else's rights.
If people didn't do that, we would not have a job. But
the world would be a better place.
Facts. Now I got to bring in our special guest. Now this is a new YouTuber. It's been around for about a year. Her name is Legal Bites, and you guys got to check out the channel. You got to click that link on the thing and check out the channel. She has some fantastic stuff, and it's short and sweet, like something, the stuff that I like, not the long marathon stuff.
The exact opposite of me.
So here we go. This is Alita from Legal Bites. I'm saying it right? Alita.
Yes, boom. Perfect.
There it is. Introduce yourself to the people. Tell them who you are, where you're from, and where to find you.
Yeah. Okay, so hi, I'm Alita, obviously from Legal Bites. You can find me on YouTube, also Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. So I've been, like Nate said, I've been uploading videos since the end of June, and fairly consistently since then. I plan to in the future. So yeah, happy to be here. I'm really excited. I've been subscribed to both of your channels since the summertime, and I'm just so excited to be here. Really happy.
Oh, I'm scared now. If you've been subscribed that long, you've seen the horror shows that we've been going through of the Katie Joy madness. It's Kurt's fault too. That's Kurt's fault. Kurt's over here.
That's definitely mine. Yeah.
So what are some things that you like to cover in your channel? Because Kurt is more appellate law. I'm more kind of police, law enforcement. What are some topics that you like to cover on your channel?
So I like to sort of kind of pick apart from a wide array. A lot of it started off with video games and movies because my husband's a really big gamer. So I sort of just by osmosis just started picking that up from him. And then so started analyzing some movies and TV shows, and then kind of got into some of the more serious topics like the election and that kind of stuff too. So I kind of just follow my curiosity, to be honest.
What's your favorite movie genre, if I can say? Are you sci-fi, horror?
So I love anything that's going to make my brain work for me. So like Inception is probably one of my favorite movies. But I'm also I grew up, probably like you, Nate, I grew up with comic books, and X-Men was my favorite TV show as a kid. So Marvel is the Marvel movies. My husband, he's probably rolling his eyes right now, but
DC baby, Snyder cut.
Legal Bites, did you ever see the movie Primer? It's a time travel movie.
No, I didn't.
Okay, you'll if you like movies that merely make your head think, you'll like Primer, because trying to keep track of the timeline is
Okay,
Primer.
so kind of like Tenet.
Yeah, it's an interesting movie. It was actually really well done. It was filmed on like a shoestring budget. I think it was filmed for like less than $100,000 or something ridiculous, and it's actually a really, really good movie.
I think I saw this movie where it's like somebody builds a time machine and they try to figure out.
They build a box that's a time machine, and they use the box to it's just a box with like special things, and they use the box to travel in time machine, and then you have all these overlapping timelines because you have them basically traveling in their own timeline multiple times. So trying to keep track of what's happening when is
that reminds me of Tenet. If it could have been, done
Primer.
I don't know.
Check it out.
Tenet was it's kind of like that. I had a harder time following it, but I was enjoying kind of the headache that I was getting from it. But
I gotta check out Tenet. I haven't seen it.
I've not seen Tenet.
Don't spoil it. Don't spoil the
movie there.
Okay. Yeah.
Right.
I mean, it's one of those. It's one of those that like really, you really have to think kind of hard to try to follow along. So.
And 7 just subbed. All right, and 7. I'm not sure if this could be illegal bites, but hit that sub button. Hope you and Uncivil Law can do a live event in Dallas in the future. I'm actually gonna be in Dallas in August.
Nice.
So I'm hoping that's right. But I'm going to be in the airport for like maybe 4 hours before I go to Vegas for a bachelor party. Yes, I'm going to do a bachelor party in Vegas. It's funny because it's you're going to see middle-aged men trying to live it up in Vegas, but it is what it is. Well, what can you say? So listen, people, let's get into it because the people we've been cutting it. We got to get to it because the people are going to be like, Nate, you're talking too much again. Shut up and get to the story. So, George Floyd, right? Chauvin trial. We're right here. What is it? Day 3 or day 4? Have you guys watched? And what are your guys' feelings on the trial, the situation? Do you guys feel it's going to be a conviction? How do you guys feel about the whole situation? Let's start with you, Legal Bites. What's up?
So, I mean, it's definitely looking like a conviction is generally likely. I think it's probably just a matter of which charge that they're going to convict him on, to be honest. I know you, Nate, you were previously talking on your channel about, felony murder being a possibility. I actually initially, coming from California, I didn't see how felony murder would come in. Because in California, the statute, the felony murder statute, it's for certain specific felonies that you can charge that under. But so at first I was like, I don't know, like would that really actually work? But in Minnesota, that's actually a possibility. Like there's actual case law where someone for assault, depending on the circumstances of that assault, that actually could result in a felony murder conviction. So I think that's increasingly likely the more that they build up the nature of the knee on the neck, and if they just keep bringing up 9 minutes and 29 seconds, and that whole narrative. So it's looking fairly likely. I think that he'll be convicted.
What's up, Kirk?
No, I was just saying, I'm sort of a 60% favoring the prosecution right now, but I think that's a very soft number and very volatile. Legal Bites was alluding to this, but the problem is that Minnesota just doesn't have the merger rule. Who knew? They're like one of 3 states that doesn't have it, because I'm like, you can't use the underlying assault as the felony in felony murder, but apparently you can because Minnesota, for some reason, it's like, okay, well, that's a thing. Yeah, but I think it's about 60%. The testimony has been basically what I would have predicted so far. We've got some initial eyewitnesses who were there saying what they were able to see from their various vantage points. The opening was fairly good from the prosecution, a little bit repetitive on this Johnny Cochran phrase, which was "get up and let up." They're trying to go with this Johnny Cochran-esque phrase. I thought it was a little much. Also, I think the prosecution is potentially in danger. I don't think they're there yet. But I think they're in danger of, I don't know what the equivalent of semantic satiation is, and maybe it's the same term. By using the same video over and over again, it's just going to become so much noise.
Yeah. And it desensitizes the jury.
Yeah, desensitize. So semantic associations where you like just keep saying the same word over and over and over. By some point, it just loses all meaning. So the idea is that by playing the video over and over, not only will it desensitize, but it can actually like just become noise. It can even be worse than that. I think they're in danger. There's some danger of them heading that direction, and they also have to be careful in the emotional play, because you definitely want to balance the emotional and factual play and not overextend on the emotional play, because again, you can oversaturate someone's emotional compassion. And you see that in a lot of different circumstances where, eventually people can't keep caring, and they eventually just shut down. There's a lot of things like that. One of the best ones on that, incidentally, is like for charity giving. There's 3 bajillion studies that say, if you're a charity, you ask to support one specific person. Please help this 13-year-old child. His name is Mike, and he lives in this specific city, and here's his exact things. Please help Mike. And people will give to that. If you say, please help 100,000 children like him, not so much, because people just get overwhelmed. So there's some danger there. We haven't really heard the sort of the testimony from experts regarding use of force, in terms of how specifically they're trained there, and how that would play one way or another. We haven't really heard the medical examiner's testimony, although I don't think that really is a factor for the defense. I think their best chance is to try to go after the underlying and felony, specifically on the intent element, and try to say that they didn't form the intent because even if it's not strictly consistent with the training, they were in the spirit of the training, or they were trying to follow procedures that they used before. And so depending on how that goes, we'll see. But of course, the defense's best chance in the grand scheme is that they have to prove beyond a reasonable doubt. And that's a really high standard. So right now I favor about 60% of the prosecution. It's been about what I expected so far. And we'll see how it gets once we get into the experts, and particularly when we get into the defense case.
I hear that. Thank you, Christina. Please don't forget to hit the like button and share on social media. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
And that was you see our personalities already develop. Legal Bites gives a very short answer. I've given an extended answer.
We're an hour in, man. We're an hour in. I asked you what's your name, man. Give your channel. What are we talking about?
I'm so sorry.
All right. So I've done this incredibly deep dive into both felony murder and into like Minnesota law. I'm ready to take the Minnesota bar on felony murder, right?
Yes,
that's how deep I feel like I'm in this thing right now. So I'm going to say right now, I am 80-20 conviction. And I will tell you why I'm 80-20 conviction. First, felony murder. Now, as the chat knows, a lot of times we'll throw out these terms, and I like to tell you guys what the terms mean, because we'll say something like felony murder, and people don't know. Felony murder is if you have an underlying offense, underlying felony, and someone commits that felony, let's say like a robbery, a bank robbery, and someone dies in the commission of that felony, then even if the person who's committing the felony didn't kill them, they can be held liable for murder. Because that's why it's called felony murder. And felony murder is what's known as a strict liability crime, meaning the prosecution doesn't have to prove the mens rea for the murder. Only thing they have to do is prove the mens rea for the underlying felony. If you had the mens rea to commit the robbery, and I can prove you committed the robbery, then on the back end, that automatically gets you to murder, felony murder, if someone dies. And Minnesota's particularly, they have what's known as the agency rule, where some states, which is a minority rule, some states, if you're robbing a bank, and let's say the cop kills your accomplice, they would charge you. I think in California was like this. A couple of cases out of California I was reading, where they can charge you with felony murder, even though the cop killed your accomplice. In Minnesota, they don't have that. And they have what they call the agency rule, where if you or your accomplice kill someone, that accomplice would be known as an agent. But if a non-felon kills someone, you wouldn't be held responsible under their rule. So it helps. Now, here, when you heard about the merger doctrine, Kurt mentioned the merger doctrine earlier. The merger doctrine is if you have to commit the underlying offense to commit the felony, then it merges. So you can't be charged with them both. An example of that would be theft and robbery. if I'm committing a robbery, I'm committing a theft. But by definition, a robbery is a theft, but with force. So you can't charge me with both the theft and then a robbery because it merges into the robbery. And the same thing here. And with murder, generally the assault would merge into a murder. But here in Minnesota, they don't have that doctrine. So your underlying offense, which is in a lot of the case law, can be the assault, which is assault in the third degree here. And if you can prove that this officer committed assault in the third degree, then because a murder happened in the commission of that crime, he can be held accountable for the murder through the strict liability. You don't have to prove his mens rea. So that's why I believe, right? And now the last piece of it, which now the term I'm going to throw out there, is a term of justification. So you guys all know I was in law enforcement. I was a former prosecutor. Now there's a justification piece to this. In all use of force that officers do, there's always going to be an assault, right? If I'm trying to physically stop you from doing something, that's technically an assault. But what makes me as an officer not liable for an assault is justification. I'm justified under statute to say that I can use a reasonable amount of force to subdue you, to lock you up, to use force to hold you accountable. If I use excessive force, that turns into an assault. If I use reasonable force, then I'm justified. That's where this fight is at. I actually did a search of the term use of force in both the openings and both sides. Both sides use the term 21 times because this case is going to turn on the justification. If the defense can show Derek Chauvin is justified in using force, none of the murder charges stick. You don't got manslaughter. You don't have anything. And the reason why is because he would be justified in his use of force. But on the back end of that, if you can prove that he assaulted George Floyd, that would happen was an assault, then I don't see how you can't get to second degree murder because if it says that was an assault and during the commission of the assault he died, then you have felony murder. I know I talked a lot. That seemed I was on the Kurt level right there, except I'm hoping I got you by a couple of seconds. But with all that said, there's been a lot of talk on social media about the aspect of the jury having the outside interference of the riots, right? Is that if they come out, the jury, a lot of people are saying the jury can't be a fair trial here because if you get the wrong verdict, you get like the Rodney King riots, right? Except nationwide instead of in LA. Legal Bites, do you have any fear or do you think that may play a role into the decision? Or do you think the jury can be isolated from that? Or do you think that they may have to think about something like that when they come to their decision?
Well, sorry. In any case, the court is going to try to insulate them as much as possible, right? I mean, that's why we've got, anonymity throughout the trial and, so that they're as uninfluenced as possible. But realistically, I mean, this trial isn't happening in a vacuum. Everyone has heard of George Floyd all around the world, pretty much. There were protests, there were BLM protests that followed in, Europe, in Australia, and, so many different countries. So, I mean, it's virtually impossible to find anyone in the world that didn't already know about this case to some extent. And I think I read that there was only one of the jurors that had never seen the video before of his death. So, I mean, it's just, realistically, like that is the reality in this case is that, I mean, anytime you have a high profile case, but I think this case especially, there's going to be that sort of a risk. And that's just the sort of the horizon or the playing field that everyone has to work with.
What do you think, Kurt?
I think that's right. And I mean, that's one of the reasons that voir dire went on so long, why they asked such extensive questionnaires and spent so much time to try to find people that would be as uninfluenceable by external factors as possible. It's not the first time of our country we've had a high profile trial and a high profile jury. So we have some experience with it. So, but it's a factor. Will they feel that pressure? It's hard to imagine that it won't be in their mind on some level. So, yeah, but I don't know there's anything you can do about it because what alternative is there? Is it moving somewhere else in the state? We'd be better off with a different jury. Is it how do we get out of this problem? And there may not be a solution.
I don't think you can, but I think it always comes because I thought you had the same thing with the OJ jury. everybody knew what happened with OJ. So it was like you're not going to get people, but it's can you really choose people who are going to be impartial? I think really with Chauvin, I think the problem is really going to come down to really just the characterization of what's going on, and I think the defense team just has a lot to going on. But we'll see. Let me get the super chat out. This is Alita's brother Andy. True story. Is this true? Is this it?
This is my brother. This is one of my siblings. This is a joke, obviously. I've never wanted to be a maritime lawyer. He's referring to Arrested Development, which we watched however many years ago when it came out, and all the lawyers in there and everything are just hilarious. So yeah, he's a jokester. I love him.
Thank you, Andy, for the super chat. John O'Brien, good evening. Do you have any indication that the state will request jury instructions on the elements of the underlying assault? Well, from my understanding, the state has to prove beyond a reasonable doubt the underlying assault in the third degree. And that's the catch. That's the one thing I don't like about felony murder, is because you get murder for free. Because it turns murder into a strict liability crime. Again, I hate throwing out terms without strict liability is something like statutory rape. Right. If someone has sex with someone who's under a certain age, no matter, the mens rea aspect is removed. It's just an actus reus. Did you commit the act? Yes. Strict liability. And that's what felony murder turns actually murder into. It's a strict liability crime if you can prove the underlying assault. So no, what they would have to do is they will enjoy the instructions that you had that for even though they didn't charge murder or assault in the third degree, they will give the elements for murder in the third degree and say, if you find this person guilty of assault in the third degree, essentially you're finding a person guilty of murder, second degree murder. So that's what happened. I don't know if you guys want to add on to that. I'm sorry.
No, I mean that's why I really had to look into that the rule in Minnesota, because to me it seemed kind of nuts, because the way that it can kind of collapse into itself with assault and murder. So I just it's definitely a minority rule, it seems like.
Yeah, they have a
very minority. It's like 3 states or something.
They have this weird. Well, it's funny. Their merger doctrine. It's weird because it's not like they don't have it. They do have it in certain respects. For instance, there was one case that I had read where somebody was actually charged with manslaughter, like one of the a really low manslaughter, like second degree manslaughter, but that's an underlying felony, and the person died. So they were like, "Hey, we can charge second degree murder, right? We have an underlying felony. The person died in the commission of manslaughter, but so they said, no, you can't do that, because if that would essentially eviscerate manslaughter, right? Every manslaughter charge, then you could just say, hey, that was a felony and you have second degree. So the rule is really if the underlying felony can be separated from the murder, where you could say, okay, this was the assault versus this was the murder. That it's I know it's weird, but instead of just but like you're saying, it's a really, really minority rule. So right now we all think leading conviction, but obviously we got to wait to the defense, and then we'll see what happens. But just so everybody knows, this is not legal advice. These are just legal opinions from commentators. And on top of that, Derek Chauvin is an innocent man until he's convicted in a court of law in competent jurisdiction. I think we all agree with that, right?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
So don't sue us. Don't sue us. That's the disclaimer for the day. So let's move on to something. Again, I felt like we moved from tragedy to tragedy here, but we got one tragedy that's going race riots in the streets. Now let's go to the other tragedy. So now we have the Asian spa shootings in Atlanta. Now, one thing about these shootings is that the media has been saying this should be a hate crime, right? This should be a hate crime. This should be a hate crime. This should be a hate crime. When I see the case and I just looked at the facts, it didn't seem to be a hate crime to me. So I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with the facts, but I've come to the conclusion that it's just not a hate crime. If it may be, I could say you can make an argument that it's a hate crime against gender, but I don't think it's a hate crime against race because of the fact that this person frequented these places, the fact that this person didn't have any history of bias or motive. And obviously the one thing about the hate crime piece is that with hate crimes, it's unique in criminal law because you have to prove somebody's motive instead of just proving their intent. And proving someone's motive is a hell of a thing to do. I can barely do it to my kids. Why the hell did you do that? Daddy, you crazy? You know, it's just insane. So with hate crimes, how do you guys feel about hate crimes? Again, the piece about proving motives versus intent.
Yeah.
And do you think the Asian spa shootings were hate crimes?
So I'm a bit in your camp, Nate, because so in order to prove a hate crime, obviously there's the crime itself, and then you have to add extra evidence, right, to show not only was this a murder, not only was it a murder spree, but he specifically had that in his mind that he was targeting individuals from a particular demographic. So that's like you said, that's much harder to prove, and so you have to get inside his mind. So you need some sort of evidence, like either he was shouting some sort of racial slurs at the time, you know, or he's gone on Facebook and left tons of comments that are, you know, anti-Asian. I mean, that's usually the kind of evidence that's required in order to show that, because otherwise all you end up with is, you know, you have a certain crime that's committed against someone in a particular demographic, and just by virtue of them being in that demographic, then it's automatically a hate crime. So, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure on the philosophical rationale, and this is where you're trying to, if you want to try to treat different categories of things differently, it's nice to have a philosophical rationale. So it's like, well, you could have a lot of different motives for a crime. One of the motives that could be that you're targeting them specifically because of their race, okay, or some other protected characteristic. How is that different / worse than me targeting them because I don't like them as an individual? Like if I'm coming after you because I don't like you, so that's more personal, I suppose. Whereas if I'm going after someone because of their race, it didn't really matter who I killed. Anyone would have been fine. Is that better, worse? How are we making that determination? I'm not quite sure. But yeah, it's the only example in law that I can think of that motive rather than intent is an element. And it's a little bizarre. So yeah.
Well, it's an aggravating it's an aggravating element to an already established crime.
That's true. That's right. It's not like you can't, if you don't prove it, that you don't make the crime. That's right.
Yeah. And to be honest with you, in most cases, the prosecution tries to at least provide some motive for the crime, because juries, for some reason, like to know, like, why, you know, she had insurance, you know, that type of thing. So the juries love motives, but even though it's not, you don't have to prove them, and which is again, it's like I think Legal Bites said, it's just so hard. It's harder to prove motive, and it's hard to just get in somebody's mind and say, why did you do this? Here's one that says, what are your thoughts on the publicists who are taking pictures of the jurors during the Chauvin trial? Either one of you guys want to take that?
My understanding, and someone will correct me if I'm wrong, is that this publicist apparently was taking a photo in the restricted corridor and she was a publicist for one of the victims, PR person for this victim. And the victim was meeting with somebody like who is a prosecution kind of person, like the chief prosecutor or someone. And she took a picture of this, not of the juror. She wasn't taking a picture in the courtroom. She's taking a picture in the hallway of her witness of this victim meeting with insert prosecution, the chief prosecutor, attorney general, or whatever. But she was ordered to delete the photo and, you know, not post it, and she seemed to agree. So I don't want to oversell it for what it is, but that's my understanding of it based on the hearing.
I'm totally, I don't know what happened. Have you heard about this story, Legal Bites?
No, I actually hadn't. Was that just today, or?
I think it was at the end of day 2, actually, that this happened.
Oh, that's something I'll look into, but I haven't seen it. But I would think the court would have, like, you know, like I know when every time I go to court, they
was
on your phone. This.
I was pretty sure.
All right.
Yeah. I just didn't want to say out of turn because I was pretty sure it was the AG, and I just didn't want to, you know, say if I wasn't 100%. Yeah. That's so it was this victim who was meeting with the AG in the hallway on the restricted floor, and so her PR person took a photo of them meeting. And the judge had a hearing with this woman at the end of day 2 and like reviewed her cell phone. And the judge apparently was satisfied that it was an instant error. So he said, delete your photo and be on your way. So the judge was satisfied. So I'm like, okay, well, fair enough.
Interesting. Yeah. Well, but I don't know. I gotta check. I gotta check out that story because I heard to show you. I've been so focused in on the trial. I heard nothing about anything that's happening in the outside world. I'm just strictly inside that little space. So as we move on, so we've gone to, the trial, the racism trial of the year. We've gone on to hate crimes for Asian Americans. Now it seems like we were going through the House of Horrors. We're on the next horror show of crimes here.
Isn't that law though?
that is law. I just feel like this is a little down. Like,
same
oh my God.
shit, different day.
So let me tease this up. So obviously everyone knows this week. Last week it was Equal Pay Day. Now, Equal Pay Day is a day that has come about for the past 20 years to show that to hopefully bridge the gap between equal pay between men and women. Now, just so we can all be on the same page, yes, there is an issue between equal pay between men and women. That is a fact. But a couple of things the couple of nuanced pieces that people don't understand is that that's really in the private sector, not in the public sector. In the public sector, for instance, your government jobs, teachers, firefighters, even politicians, everybody's getting paid the same, right? Nobody, it's not like, because you're a woman politician versus a male politician, you get it's all equal in the public sector. So this is really a private sector phenomenon that we're dealing with, where some companies, for some reason, pay women less. And, there's a whole bunch of issues that's going to it. But the U.S. female women's soccer team sued the U.S. Soccer Federation for equal pay. And for those of you who don't know the lawsuit, essentially the women's soccer team in 2017 negotiated a contract, and they negotiated this deal with U.S. Soccer. Come to find out, their deal, they negotiated for lower risk. Give us they have like $100,000 salary for 20 players, so they had all this risk taken out of their contract and benefits. They had a whole bunch of benefits also put into the contract. Where the men, they get their benefits from their other teams, from like MLS, from the Premier League. So they don't really need benefits. So what they just did is just pay us cash. So come to find out, so the women, when they won the World Cup, they did the math and said, oh my God, if we had the men's deal, we'd have got $66 million more. So they sued U.S. Soccer, saying that they were not being paid the same as the men for the $66 million that they would have gotten under the men's deal. But conversely, the court found in the court documents, that the men also would have gotten more money if they were under the women's deal. So at the end of the day, the court threw out the case. So now, but the women's U.S. soccer team is still going around saying that they were being paid less than the men. But even that claim is untrue, because as the court documents found, the women actually got paid more than the men in the time period covering the lawsuit. So at the end of the day, well, what y'all ask you to now, what do you think about the lawsuit between the U.S. women's soccer team? What do you think about equal pay? And do you think the phenomenon is now being taken over, or do you think that there could be a better example of this particular suit? Like how do you feel about the whole situation?
So, I mean, obviously the statistics are out there that there is a gap in pay when you compare average women pay to average men pay. Of course, I mean, there's all kinds of disagreement depending on, what side of the political spectrum you're on, or, depending on how you look at it. But, if you look at it on kind of more of a micro level, people start to see that there is less and less of a natural bias between pay. Typically, from what I've seen, at least the studies that I've seen, maybe I'm not looking at all the right data, could be, but I think this case is, to me, it's not exactly very well representative of the gaps in pay, because of the fact that they did negotiate this ahead of time. Anytime you negotiate fully for a certain agreement, the court is not likely to look very favorably on your complaint that you got an unfair deal at the end of it. Because, unless you can show that, I wasn't fully represented like the other side was, or they were withholding information from us, or, something about that contract negotiation to show that it was unfair. But I mean, if you just say, well, on this end of it, I no longer like the deal that I got, taking a second bite at the apple. You know, it's like, well, I mean, you got what you got. You negotiated for, lower risk, and then so lower risk, lower reward. That's part of the negotiation as well. You could also have, if you wanted to increase some risk in there to increase some pay, you could have done that. But I mean, that risk is now over because hindsight is 2020.
Yeah.
So you can't go back in time and renegotiate that long after the fact. So,
amen to that. Go ahead, Kurt. You like you have something to say.
Yeah, no, I agree with Legal Bites here that we have to reject the premise right off the bat here. We can't let that go unaddressed, that the pay gap is a problem in the private sector either, because as Legal Bites was pointing out, if you take all the money earned by all the women divided by the number of women, and all the money earned by all the men divided by the number of men, yeah, there's a gap. It's something like 77 cents on the dollar, or whatever the number is these days. But then again, it's not equal pay. It's equal pay for equal work. And so the studies that have tried to account for all the factors like level of education, amount of time in job, seniority, overtime hours, try to account for everything. Once you try to account for everything, this pay discrepancies disappear. It winds up being about 97 cents on the dollar on average.
Yeah.
And women these days seem, according to the current data, seem to actually be making more than men, at least in their initial part of their careers, for whatever that's worth. Now, what was interesting about the women's soccer is that they were offered the men's deal. They were offered the men's deal. They have that choice. And shouldn't they? So what exactly is the premise here? The women are saying we shouldn't have freedom. We should have been forced to have this deal imposed upon us because we as women can't be trusted to make decisions on our own behalf. What's the grand narrative premise here? Nothing works. So the whole thing seems silly.
Well, it seems like they were trying to have their cake and eat it too, right? They wanted all those protections, all those benefits, but they also didn't want all the money on top of that. And I do understand. It's like part of me understands, like, all right, we've been screwed for all these years. Why not give us the come up this time? But then the second part is, why go to court and then pull on my heartstrings and tell me you're not getting paid equally, and then got to find out that you rejected the deal that now you want to take? You know what I'm saying? That just doesn't work for me. But I think the judge. But two things I think about this case. One, the media is malpractice. The media is malpractice. It's like they have not been telling the story as it should be told. It's just like, just give us the facts. They rejected the same deal. They got paid more money. If you heard that, then maybe a lot of the people who are sitting there, yelling at me on Twitter, telling me I don't know what I'm talking about, would say, oh, you know what? That makes sense. And I think the second part of it is that it hurts the actual cause, because there is an actual issue here that can be resolved, and I think that should be dealt with. But when you put something out there and people feel like they've been lied to, and they've been, and this wasn't the case that was presented to them, then that makes them antithetical to the real issues that come up. It's the boy that cried wolf scenario, right? All these wolves, and now you're telling me this is not, this is the same wolf too. You're selling wolf tickets. I'm not buying this.
Wolf tickets. I like that. I mean, and let me say, I mean, I have every reason in the world to be super concerned about this issue, right? I mean, I want to get paid for equally for the work that I put in as well. But if it comes out that the issue is not so much bias, but it's because of life choices. Women typically tend to make decisions to spend more time at home.
You just cut off for a second there. So I was worried.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, I mean, so what I was saying is that, women typically tend to take up more work at home, even when they're working a full-time job, than men. And part of that is just, kind of cultural, cultural impact, I guess you could say. And I've heard some people that have recommended that, maybe part of the solution is sort of, in order to impact that culture, for women not getting ahead because they're taking time off, for having a kid and then coming back into work, maybe increasing that, you have national, rights for maternity leave. I've heard people suggesting that maybe paternity leave is also, a good way to do that, to extend that to men, so that there's not so much this stigma if a man does, take some time off to take care of a kid I don't know. And I think something tells me that there are other ways to look at it other than just straight up bias that are maybe a little more nuanced and maybe not so obvious and not as sexy, but they're important. It's important to look at these.
You said the forbidden word, nuance. You might have to actually look at this with some care and some deliberation about what's really going on, rather than just going to the cheap stuff, right? It's like, yeah.
So hold on. So now I got to throw you guys a curveball. I didn't tell you guys. Now I've seen you guys both cover the story, so I don't think it's going to shock you.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm gonna throw it out there. It wasn't on our list. Lil Nas X.
Yeah,
I got the two people who
Nike got their TRO. I just got an alert. Nike got their TRO somehow.
This is right up your guys' alley. Go ahead, Legal Bites, take it.
I actually considered bringing this up to you guys ahead of time, because I totally went down this rabbit hole yesterday, because I had no idea what this art collective was, or MSCHF. Is it pronounced mischief? I think. I don't know. There's no vowels. It's hard to know.
Give us if you can, give us a little background on it.
Okay, so Nike obviously has their signature shoes. We all know what they look like. We know, it's got the swoosh on it and everything. And so Lil Nas X collaborated with this art collective. I'm going to call it Mischief, because that's the closest that I can come to it. So they collaborated to create a shoe called the Satan shoe. It has a pentagram on it. It has a drop of human blood in it. This art collective, they often do these kinds of, from my research, they often do these kinds of like weird, kind of disruptive, quirky things with items or with pieces that we otherwise would recognize. So they've previously done a Jesus shoe. I had no idea. I saw that they previously also took a Damien Hirst painting and cut it up and then sold it into like smaller pieces, and then took the outline of it and then sold that for even more than what it was initially worth. They do all kinds of like crazy things, mostly to make statements. But Nike is really not happy about this whole development with the Satan shoe, because it looks a lot like Nike's classic shoe. And there you go. I mean, so when you look at it, it kind of does look like Nike is endorsing Satanism, and there are a lot of people that are not happy about that. So now they're suing for trademark infringement with a number of claims. I think there's like 4 claims, right, for trademark infringement.
Yeah, they're all trademark. It's trademark. Yeah. Because it's dilution. It's like an unfair competition. There's like a state law. It's trademark times 4.
Yeah.
So
which is interesting to me, though.
No, go ahead.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, what's interesting to me about it, though, is that I mean, this the defense that they likely would pull up is something along the lines of like I don't know if you guys are familiar with the Louis Vuitton case, where it's parody, essentially, where they're taking a certain recognizable brand and then parodying it. But I was kind of looking into some of the case law to see if that would be a good defense. But I mean, yeah, it's gonna be a hell of a case. Sorry.
Well, trust me. Oh no, it's okay. It's totally fine. Kurt is good. Kurt is the man with the low. This way, Kurt is the man when it comes to the hole in the case. Kurt will tell us what's wrong with the case. You go ahead.
Well, apparently Nike got their TRO, which I find to be a bit surprising, because Nike's complaint left a lot to be desired.
I know. I watched your stream.
Yeah. Nike's like, here's evidence of actual confusion. And Emily D. Baker noticed the same problem. Like every single tweet or Instagram thing they said, none of them expressly tied to the controversy on their own terms. And they didn't even allege it. They didn't say something like, here are Instagrams or here are tweets we found discussing the shoe. They didn't even say that much. All Nike said was, here are some social media comments we found, like with no context. And it's like, Nike needs Jesus. I don't know what that's in relation to. I mean, I could guess, but I don't know. And I said to myself, well, one would presume that Nike is a rich company, and one would presume that Nike would have access to the best trademark lawyers. And one would presume that the best trademark lawyers would look for the best possible examples to put in their complaint to put the best foot forward. And therefore, one would presume that those are the best possible examples. And then I said, ultimate conclusion, if these are the best Nike has, their case is crap because none of them suck. They're all bad. But apparently the judge granted the TRO anyway. So what do I know, I guess? But all right, yeah.
So just so everybody knows, temporary restraining order. Now to get but to get a TRO, that is it's not like you just get a TRO for nothing. A TRO is a pretty high standard to get, right? In other words, the judge is saying that there's a likelihood that you're going to win on the merits.
Nike didn't. This is also like bizarre because I don't know what's going on in Nike legal practice world. They didn't even actually, strictly speaking, make a motion for a TRO. They put in a proposed order to show cause, and then they put in a memorandum in support of the motion for a TRO. But they never actually moved for a TRO. But apparently the judge doesn't care. So why should I? Right?
Well, at the end of the day, though, because it seems like from my understanding, it looks like both of you guys are I don't want to say pro Nike, but you guys think that Nike really doesn't have that strong of a case.
Not right now, they don't.
And when I was looking at it, I came to the opposite conclusion, but my conclusion was just like, this is clearly a Nike shoe, right? It's got the check mark, and obviously they've modified it. But if Nike's, and I know there were a lot of lawyers out there who were saying, well, hold on, Nike does this all the time. So they allow other people to modify their shoes and put them on the market. People do this all the time. So, so now why would this be different with Nas X? But my response to that was Nike can do whatever, it's like, I can let you do whatever you want and say, you're not, I don't mind you messing with my copyright, but here, I don't want you to do that, so I didn't think that issue. But at the end of the day, when you look at that shoe, it's like, I know it's a Nike shoe, and I wouldn't be able to tell if Nike's making those shoes or if somebody else is making those shoes. I'll put it back up again. But it just, looking at it, to me, it does look like a Nike shoe. It's got a check mark on, you know what I'm saying? So it's, even though I would say, even if I agree with you guys that the complaint left a lot to be desired, I just think on the merits, it's plain and simple. This is infringement. How do you not get to infringement here?
Yeah, I'd say, even with issues in the complaint, those can be fixed. If the opposite side they file a motion to dismiss, you can then just go back and fix whatever pleading issues that you have, and then refile if that's really necessary. But it's when you look at that shoe, the gut instinct is, oh wow, Nike and Satanism. They're really getting out there, but it's just, yeah. Like I said, it would be interesting to see, what sort of creative arguments that the defense would have, on the other side for expression and parody and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so. but I don't know, especially, but you're only selling 666 of them. I get it, but I'm just saying, looking at that ad, if I saw that out on the train, I'm like, that's a Nike shoe.
Yeah,
there's no doubt about it.
Yeah,
Kurt, it looks like you want to say something, Kurt.
Well, I try to judge every legal case on its own pleadings, right? It's the same thing I did in the Toddy Westbrook case, or the same thing I did in the Vic Mignogna case, right? Yeah, because the same people were like very mad at me with the Toddy Westbrook, Katie Joy, because it's like, well, you're not going outside, you don't know all these things. I'm like, I'm very deliberately not doing that because I'm very deliberately keeping myself within the confines of the case, like a good judge. So it's like, there's all kinds of reasons that you could think that this is a problem, but like a good judge, I am trying to look at the complaint that Nike actually filed, and I'm like, this is crap. so I can only suppose that the judge saw Nike and decided that maybe not crap because Nike, but it didn't wow me over. So even people in my live stream chat were proposing better suggestions than what Nike had. They said, well, Nike does a lot of these collabs, and usually the way, according to them at least, the way that Nike does these collabs when they do it, they'll say something like Beyonce X, Nike, and they use the X as a marker to indicate a collab. And then, of course, Lil Nas ends in X, right? So the idea was because Lil Nas X would indicate, if it were Beyonce X, would indicate an authorized collab. Because it's Lil Nas X, it might be perceived as a authorized collab. And I said to my chat, well, you apparently are smarter than a Nike lawyer. Would have been nice if they argued that, but because they didn't, I can't consider it. So what do you want from me? You know?
Well, hold on. Let's even though I do agree. After seeing your stream, I do agree that the complaint was left to be desired, but it was enough to get a TRO. That is, it's no matter how the complaint couldn't have been that bad. If the judge is saying, I read this complaint and I read this memorandum of law, and I believe there's enough here where there's a likelihood you're going to win on the merits because of what I just read.
I think that's a hell of a complaint. I think Nike might have gotten a little favoritism, is what I'm saying here. I'm thinking maybe the access to justice may not be actually fair on this one.
Viva says modifying one shoe is different than selling 666 limited editions.
See, on a legal standpoint, I'm not sure how. Like the scale of it's different, but the legal rationales are exactly the same. So the differences are difference in damages, and there's differences in the relevant markets, but the ultimate legal analysis is the same for one or a million.
I mean, I don't know if you look at it from the perspective of the public, because trademarks, for example, just to begin with, trademarks is a consumer protection law at its heart, right? So what you're doing is you're protecting consumers so that they don't confuse one brand with another. That's the basic trademark law principle. So when you have 666 versus 1. Then you have distribution. So you have a whole campaign to sell multiples. So, when you're looking at it with that certain perspective from the consumer, that can look like there's, it's limited edition, but there's only so many, but it can look like it's an actual distribution of a new line that's just very, very limited. When you have one, that can be an art piece. So
I don't know that art becomes less art just because it's done in mass. Because you have one of a kind versus you're making a thousand.
No, I would actually agree with that, because especially in this case, because what was really interesting to me about this is that it's not just the shoe that's being sold for its own sake. It also appeared in the music video. So there's and the music video has all of these kinds of messages that he's trying to send about being yourself and like being expressively open and all kinds of messages that you can peel back and analyze, and having the shoe be part of that and then being sold to it's almost like performance art. That's this whole thing for them. So I would agree. But anyway,
you know what? I'm actually gonna disagree with you, Kurt. I believe the more you have, the more it can drive the confusion in the marketplace. Because I think at the end of the day, that's what Nike's essentially saying. The marketplace is confused. These are not our shoes. One shoe, so Jelly Bob in the back, makes one shoe. It's not going to confuse the market. But if you got thousands of shoes out there and people think that this is a Nike brand, then yeah, I think. Yeah,
well, then
I think you can have something.
The market is, which is also a fight too. What is the market in this domain? But but I do think it's a difference in scale. One shoe is a lot different. Now this 666 in the way it's been marketed and put out there, $1,000 a shoe. I think Nike it's put out there enough where I think Nike can make a legitimate beef to say this person's promoting it, and this is not our shoe. You know what I'm saying? And we don't. And again, let's not forget, Nike does have all these, Catholic school deals with, with all these religious organizations, stuff like that. So they don't want to be on, they don't
on
really
the odd ends of that.
They don't really believe in the Church of Satan or the Satanic Temple. They're not really into that kind of thing.
Oh no, they believe in money, and they know 70% of the market out there are Christians that don't, So that's what they think. That's what they're thinking about. Because that's what it all comes down to, right? If the Jesus shoe. You didn't see anything about that, right? The Satan shoe, we got to stop that, because that's a pocket killer, right? We can't die.
Yeah.
If you're the young Christian, what is it, YMCA? You can't have people walking around with Satan shoes, right? You can't. It's just not going to happen. Let's go with Reebok, the good Christian company. I agree with they. Thank you, Lee. Thank you for following super chat.
Adidas comes out with the Satan shoe just for the hell of it. That'd be
fun. We're anti-Nike.
Yeah.
So let's push this one on to the person's name who I cannot speak for some reason. David Dobrik, right? Or Dobrik. Dobrik. I'm going to pass it to you, Legal Bites, to explain to the folks what's going on with this case?
So there's it seems like there's a lot of different controversies surrounding David Dobrik. The most recent one is that one of the so he's, for anyone that doesn't know, he's a really big YouTuber. He has like 18 million subscribers. He's part of the YouTube collective, the Vlog Squad. And they do all kinds of videos that are like usually involving some sort of a prank or a joke. I guess it started off fairly lighthearted. But some of them have, I guess, recently gotten a little bit more controversial. I don't follow his stuff personally, but I've seen some of the videos just after, researching through this, the various controversies that have happened. But the most recent controversy, I should say, is there's one of the members of the Vlog Squad was accused of rape in an article that came out in Insider. And I guess the night that happened, they had filmed a video, and David Dobrik had put it up on his channel. He's since taken it down. But there was this whole issue of like, if he was, involved in this whole situation. He's kind of been dragged through the mud. I'm not saying that to sound like I'm defending him in any way.
Oh yeah.
So he's lost like all of his sponsorships, it seems like, and he had a lot apparently. So he's really just having a rough time of it.
And this
right
is and he's lost all his YouTube stuff too. Like all his YouTube stuff was demonetized, right? It's been like he's been like totally killed everywhere, right?
Yeah. So for him and Dirty Dom, the other YouTuber,
Mm-hmm. You know what? One thing, the thing that's concerning is that, again, I'm not sure about the allegations, but how far these were 2018, right? And these are just allegations. Are the police investigating or anything like that? Because I watched your video on the vicarious liability.
Yeah. So from what I understand, there haven't been any criminal charges that have been filed for it. I don't know that the woman is planning to pursue anything, but there, it kind of was this sort of like expose article, and it kind of came at the same time, and I don't know if it was sparked by this or if it was sort of just at the same time as this other like kind of crap that just sort of came up from this environment with the Vlog Squad. So as far as I know, no criminal charges have been filed, but who knows? I mean, there's no statute of limitations for it in California for rape, so it could be at some point.
Wow. I'm torn with this story, and I'm torn for a couple of reasons. One is that we're starting to get to a society where allegations are as good as convictions.
Yeah.
And that's something like the one case that I'm always shocked about is the what was his name? He did Visa, Morgan Freeman. Remember when they tried to go after Morgan Freeman, and it was fine, and it was found out that there was nothing here, and it was kind of he lost that big deal. This is the Vlog Squad for those of you who don't know, and he was actually, and he lost like I think a $6 million deal with Visa and all that stuff. And then it was come to find out that it wasn't really, what people said it happened didn't really happen, so forth and so forth. And I do understand, and I want to be very clear, because I know this will go up and like, oh, Nate is saying this. There's a difference between when someone, there are people out there who want to destroy other people. Let's just be honest with you, right? And there are people out there who are in it for the money. Not all people. Now, I believe that in every situation, everyone should be believed, right? Everything should be investigated. But I believe before you start giving people negative consequences for actions that you haven't verified, like YouTube, demonetizing all that stuff, at least go a little deeper. Right now, if this is all we have somebody who said something, nothing's been verified, nothing's even been investigated, but all these people's lives are destroyed. And God forbid that, God forbid these aren't something that's correct, or or we don't have the full story about what's happening, then it's just you've destroyed these people's lives. and I think on one end, you want to be able to respond to these controversies in a particular way, but then on the other end, I think you can't. The rush to judgment is just too fast. So I don't know what the balance is. But I think right now we've just gone too far in one way. How do you feel, Kurt?
I don't know enough about the specific situation to intelligently comment about the specific issue, but I can comment in general that, first of all, terms like even terms like sexual assault are being used in increasingly very broad contexts. And so it's not necessarily clear what people are meaning by the terms anymore. Whether they mean, what exactly they're talking about. And at least in the Me Too movement, there seemed to be a tendency to try to say that they're all equally bad, which doesn't even really begin to really make sense, because, we wouldn't say all killings are equally bad. We wouldn't say all anything is equally bad. We have entire system set up to try to adjudicate different levels of even the same criminal act as how bad it is versus other criminal acts.
Hold on, let me check this out. It says David Dobrik, I'm not sure if his name, filmed everything, and you can watch the assault. Oh, see, I didn't know that.
Well, that would be exactly why I said I didn't know enough about the situation.
Yeah, I didn't know that
in general.
Yeah, so based on
trouble.
Well, based on the information I just had, I didn't know. But if everything is on there, and this, because she was having problems.
Yeah, that's fine.
But if that's true, then that's a whole different game. And I'm surprised YouTube had it up too. That's kind of crazy. But again, if the story is those are filmed up on YouTube and it's an issue, then he should be investigated and arrested. But again, I don't know enough about the story, like Kurt said. I just don't know enough about the story not to get in trouble. But I do have that fear, that if this isn't, if this is true, he should definitely go down in flames. But if it's not true, then you've made a lot of pain with just not taking the time to just verify what was going on. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think some caution should be probably prudent, and it's interesting also to see where we do apply caution and when we don't apply caution, because it seems like we don't always have the same standards. Biden was accused, of course, during the campaign, and it didn't seem to matter to some people, even though we were hashtag believe all women, but not that one. So there does seem to be some unequal treatment based on how much we do or do not like the person, which definitely can't be the right standard from any sort of perspective. So I try to apply for try to be as universally consistent as possible, because I'm based on my quick read, it looked like he's some sort of prank, one of those YouTubers who does pranks, which means I instantly hate him. So even though I instantly hate him, I'm going to try nevertheless to apply the same standards as I would to a person I like, out of a desire for consistency, and say, I'd like to know what exactly we're talking about, because sexual harassment, sexual assault, these terms to some degree don't mean anything, it seems to me, because they become so wide that it doesn't seem to really refer to anything in particular necessarily. And what is the evidence? Now, if he filmed the whole thing and they're on YouTube, then that would probably be pretty good evidence.
But it's good evidence for me.
I'm not going to comment on that. So,
Well, here's Beth saying Vlad Squad often said after showing the videos with showing videos with minors and assaults, and they back up again. Just to let everybody know, again, I got to put the legal caption to it. This is legal commentary. I don't know if these allegations are true, and as of right now, I've seen no criminal conviction to say any of this stuff is true, that they've assaulted minors or did any of that stuff. So just to be clear, I don't want to be I don't want to see Tati Westbrook hit me with a defamation claim. We don't know. This is just commentary. And unfortunately, if these things are true and he did film it, he did put them on, then you know what? He should go to jail and they should go to jail. But until that happens, where I can speak confidently and intelligently about it, I just can't go on. Kiki Don says, Nathan Lloyd, seems YouTube only does something once a channel is covered by the mainstream media, and then they demonetize and ban based on the coverage. Possibly, yeah. But don't forget, YouTube is a brand too. Mm-hmm. And before we leave out of here, there was something. Oh, here she goes. She's back. Hey.
Yay.
Hey. Oh, sorry. My earbuds are not connected now. Sorry.
Oh.
Some tech issues here.
The one thing, and this was
we had a bunch of men talking amongst themselves about Me Too. We need you to save us, please.
Oh yeah. we do crazy stuff. So she escaped and got away. Now you're back. One thing I wanted to ask you guys, and I know this is probably going to be get a hate from my subs. So I know you guys are going to hate this, but whatever. I'm going to say it anyway. I'm starting to get torn between this whole YouTube demonetization of the conservative, movement and things of that nature. And I'll explain my reason. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. And I know people are going to be upset about that. Like, oh my God, they're demonetizing all the conservatives. I'm just going to be honest with you. The reason why I don't think there's anything wrong with it is because YouTube is not a government entity, right? YouTube is a private company. They do their thing. And now I do understand they have this big, some people say cabal over, I don't want to say cabal. They have, a monopoly over video sharing on the internet. I do understand that. I do understand there's really no, you like we were talking about, like when we were talking about the Rumble lawsuit. We can't go to Rumble, right? Rumble, that's a joke, right? In terms of in size and scale to YouTube. It's nice, but it's not, it's not YouTube. So I do understand that, and I do understand it's hard to pick and choose. But I think if a friend of mine challenged me and was like, "Hey, if you're a free market guy, if you're a capitalist, then you got to take the good with the bad. If YouTube decides as a private company, we don't want this type of content on here and says we're going to ban it, you can't say certain things. You can't say the election was stolen. You can't say this. You can't say that. Then if you don't like it, you got to go and take your, you take your ball and roll." And I'm more and I understand that it doesn't seem fair, but what doesn't seem fair is one thing. What is legal? What's because it's not about what's being fair. What's lawful. And if they lawfully can do this, then who am I to say you can't do something with your own company? You know what I mean?
I would agree with you in isolation, but the problem is, it seems to me, and this could be a persecution complex maybe, but it seems to me that the conservatives, every time that they try to do this and create their own platforms, they have problems. If it's not, go and create your own platform. So they get kicked off one thing. Let's create our own social media. Oh, the web hosting company won't host this. Okay, we can find a web hosting company. Oh, maybe it's the credit card processor that won't do it. Okay, we'll find a different credit card processor. That does overseas is willing to do really sketchy transactions. Okay. Oh, now it's the domain registry. It seems like, the go and build your own thing. It isn't really practical, because when the conservatives seem to have any success, and seems to be demonstrated somewhat through Parler as an example, that we're going to take you off the App Store. We'll build your own App Store. Well, first of all, in iOS you can't do that, so there's that. But yeah, it's
Epic Games is trying to do something about that.
There's I agree with you in principle that we should be fine for us to take our ball and go home. It just seems like every time we try, we get inevitably shut down somewhere because of the various companies interacting with each other. So, that's my only counter to that.
Because go ahead.
I do have one other counter.
Okay.
Which goes back to our earlier discussion about the fact that we're all kind of getting siloed in our respective bubbles. So if we were able to actually accomplish this objective, and we had a social media sites for conservatives and ones for liberals, I'm not sure that's really necessarily good, because that would even mean more siloing than we have now.
That's true.
So there probably should be, the idea of the town square was that anyone can talk in the town square. So it might be nice to have some forum where we can all talk to each other, so we don't become more siloed on the practical level.
Well, and here are my thoughts on this topic. So, I kind of go back and forth on it sometimes, because yes, they are a private company. They're not a government entity. They can do what they want, and we can't force them to take. There are all kinds of actions that we can't force them to do. There are some that the law can, because we have certain laws for competition, and there's contract law. There's all kinds of ways that a private company can get into trouble with the law. But I think that if you look at it from the perspective of that these are companies that are increasingly becoming the public square, obviously people can get off the internet and go to an actual public square and talk about things. it's a lot harder to do that right now in a pandemic. But so increasingly, it definitely feels like these kinds of forums are very much our place to discuss and to have serious discourse about real issues. And I think that antitrust has also been a topic that it seems to me has been a growing topic in public discourse as well. So the bigger that a company gets, the more you can regulate it because it's, it has more power. So, I think that also kind of plays into that sort of topic as well. We haven't really talked about Section 230, but that's another hot topic, especially when it comes to, Congress is starting to really spend a lot of focus on big tech, both in antitrust and with Section 230. Both sides of the political spectrum are talking about making modifications to it for various reasons. On the left, people are talking about their big concern is misinformation. On the right, people are talking about, squashing conservative voices. And I think it's starting to indicate that increasingly more and more people are unhappy with the way that Section 230 is working, and it might need some kind of modification. I think that there are a lot of concerns about modifying it, obviously, because, the internet kind of functions because of it. But if there was a way to introduce that, I mean, that's kind of a thought that I've recently had, is that if there's a way to introduce the particular size of a potential platform or an internet provider, into the types of requirements that they have to continue getting Section 230 protection, that could be a way to possibly sort of alleviate some of these concerns. So.
Yeah, and the DOJ also came out with a proposal last year on a reform of 230. It didn't deal with size, but I thought it was a good, promising start in concept, which is basically just being more honest in your speech. So you have to be more transparent about what your rules are. You have to make sure that your public statements are in conformity with that. So you can't say we're a bastion for free speech and then in a term of service, Barry, not so much. It's like, no, you can't do that anymore. All your public statements have to be consistent with your terms of service. They have to be clear. They have to be applied uniformly. It's like you can't have any rule you want. It's just basically being honest in your commercial speech, which sounds pretty good. It needed work, but it was a good idea.
And I let me get the super chat. So then, by the same logic, Nate, you would support AT&T silent conservatives as well. If just to be honest, I support a free market system. What does that mean? Just because YouTube is big doesn't mean they're a monopoly. A lot of people fail to realize monopoly is just not based on size. It's based on what's generally known as an unnatural monopoly. A natural monopoly is like the first person who invents the pen. They're going to have a monopoly of pen, and there's a whole office, a government office. We should just call it the monopoly office. What is it? What is it? Copyright, right? Patent and trademark, right?
That's my domain, patents. All I do all day long is create monopolies.
So that's all that is, monopolies, right? When they come out with the new drug, that's a monopoly, for a limited time. So monopolies aren't a bad thing, because that's what business wants. You want that natural monopoly. You come with a new product. You're the only game in town, and people have to get it from you. The first people to create the TV have monopoly on TVs. I wish I would have had that monopoly on TVs until for a certain time. So my thought process is, I don't think YouTube is at the point where it is a monopoly. It's still, I think, in that natural monopoly state where it came up 20 years later. It's just huge, like Amazon, right? Amazon was in a bookstore. Now it's huge. But I do think at a point, if you're talking about getting government protections and these type of things, then obviously the government can stay regulated. And I also think, like what Kurt was saying earlier about, silencing conservative voices, I think that's more in false advertisement and being just honest with your business practices, right? We're going to be open to the public, but then silence conservative. That's something that's wrong. That's something that I would be against. But I think as a principle, though, and just in a capitalist society, the principle has to be, you have to let the free market dictate what happens. And, I just don't know how to explain it. But if conservative, you're two things that you said that gives me pause. And the first thing is, obviously, you don't want just conservative platforms and liberal platforms because, like you're saying, we'll become more isolated and more draw back into our spaces. But then the second piece of it is, I still want to be in a position where I'm telling a company that you have to let this person say something on your platform, because the next step is now saying this person can come into my house and say what they want to say, and that's just not the way we have those principles.
That's not really quite fair.
But I'm saying, but that's essentially no, but that is what we're talking about. We're talking about, I have the free. You don't have the freedom of speech in my home. You don't have the freedom of speech in my company. You have the freedom of speech against the government, right? Those freedoms you have against the government. Right. That's my thing. Has YouTube become? You guys probably read this case of Marsh v. Alabama. Has it become the company town? Because we've been saying it's the company square. Has it become that company town? I just don't think we're there yet.
No.
Yeah. I would agree. Yeah.
Let me read a couple of these super chats. Half of you haven't liked the stream, so disappointing. Oh, thank you, Nerf. Thank you so much. And here we go. I'm not sure. There are unlawful actions. It is fairly clear that there is an oligarch. Is that oligopoly? Oligopoly.
Yeah.
I've never seen that word spelled out, to be honest. I've heard it talked before. Of distribution and information and the collusions. It's the collisions. I don't know why I can't read tonight. Of companies that actively destroy disruptive companies. I don't think I've read that right. Let me try to. Kurt, read this one for me.
The first time. I'm not sure there are unlawful actions. It's fairly clear that there is an oligopoly of distribution of information and collusions of companies that actively destroy disruptive companies. So a disruptive company would be a company that is disrupting the status quo, a company that is for the first time, changing what is there. I'll be right back. So you guys talk amongst yourselves.
Oh, that's cool. Here's Eddie Oliver. By the same logic, private utility companies could deny power to where conservatives. No, wrong. Private. See, and this is where you get to the nuance of law. Not attacking you. No, this is great. We're one of my faves. Just curious what you where your lines in the sand. No, when we're talking about private utility companies, they're different because electric and water and things of that nature are things, life-saving methods, things that and actually was a bill in Congress to change internet providers to that schedule, because there's a group of companies or a group of utilities that by law can't discriminate because their service is so what's it called, so
necessary
for our life, like electric company and water company, that you can't do that. But then there's other things that are discretionary, and they say internet, for instance, I think should be on that list, which is necessary. We should all have internet, and you shouldn't be able to do it. But the video sharing services on the internet haven't reached that level. So that's where I think the law does make a distinction between utilities and things that are not necessary. And again, there's a famous case out there, Marsh v. Alabama, if you guys really want to see it, where a private company was held to be a government actor because they were like a utility. They had the roads, they had the car, they had everything, right? Even the sheriff and stuff worked for the company. And the court said, well, this is a company town, even though it's owned by a private company, the Constitution still applies, because there would be no difference between this and any other town. So there are lines in the sand, but I just don't think my issue is I don't think YouTube has gotten there yet. And I think if YouTube does get there, I think that's where has YouTube gotten it. And I don't think anybody's saying
someone tried this against AOL back in the day. And if AOL back in the day wasn't a company town, YouTube is not a company town now.
That's true. That's true. Well, we have hit all everything. It's over, right? We're almost we only going to be here for an hour. We're an hour 18.
We can just close off the law schools. There's no more law. Yeah.
So listen, we got to do this one more time. Legal Bites. Tell the people where to find you.
Yeah.
And again, just give them a little background. Tell them where to find you and what's up. Go ahead. Go.
Yeah. So I'm on YouTube. I'm on all the social media. I'm on YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. You can find me Legal Bites or Legal Bites Media. That's my Twitter handle. I do videos at least once a week. This past month, I was doing them every day with a bunch of shorts. So I haven't been doing that this week because I'm kind of taking a little bit of a change of approach again. Always trying new things. Always trying to go in different directions and find new topics. So it's been super fun.
It's a new lawyer for our network. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm so happy to have YouTube lawyer friends.
Well, Avis, you know where to find Kurt at. He's. I was pointing to the wrong side. You're over here. But there Uncivil Law. You know, with where to go. Hey, listen, Uncivil Law. You've been doing. I've been watching a lot of the newer stuff. What's up with the Capitol riot cases? I've been seeing a lot less of them. What's been going on? It's just
an issue of time. It's an issue of time and trying to find time when I can. Sometimes my day job gets to me and I don't have enough time to record them. I've got like 5 different things I want to record that I don't have time on. It's just it's trying to squeeze it all in. It's a problem, man. Well, we got to do this again, people. This was an amazing stream. The one I did yesterday, number 48, was really good. I'll give my highlight of the stream. When the FBI came to arrest him, the FBI came to arrest him. He was wearing a shirt that said, "I was there." January 6, 2020, Washington, D.C. I'm like, well, that narrows that down. We'll probably find the right guy. Our booking photo contains the confession. Well, that helps. So there's that right down. Well, listen, I'm so grateful to have you, 2 amazing lawyers on the show. Thank you guys so much for being here, and thank you guys for those who are watching. Thank you guys for joining us. Thank you guys for super chat. And thanks to the members. I really, really appreciate it. Please visit my friends, both on Civil Law for the deep dives and Legal Bites, because again, the thing is, I tried to do a short, and it's like, as soon as I start saying my name is Nate Brody. It's like 60 minutes is gone. I'm like, how the hell are these people doing it? I can't speak that fast, but
you can only get like 1 point across, and that's it. I've tried where I'm like, and then there's this and this, and then I'm like, oh my god, this is 3 minutes. I can't do this. So yeah,
3 minutes. I barely warmed up 3 minutes. What are you talking about? 3 minutes.
But you know when Kurt does a short because he goes like, the camera turns on. It's like 1 second. Hi, this is Uncivil Law. Like, okay. He's just getting it out. This is yes. But it's funny because when I've watched both of you guys' shorts, I don't feel like I'm watching a short, right? It's like I feel like I'm still getting all the information, but just in a short amount of time. It's like okay, but I just can't do it. I'm just I hate you guys. But listen, guys, thanks everybody for watching. Please visit. Oh, there we go. Uncivil Law's channel. I've dropped. Again, also, if you click on the video title, you can see, just click on those links. There's links directly to their channels. For those of you who want to go. Again, thanks again for everybody for watching. My name is Nate Brody for Uncivil Law and for Legal Bites. I almost forgot my name. We will see you guys next week, same bat time on Uncivil Law's channel, though. Uncivil Law's channel, and hopefully we'll be on Legal Bites one day. We're hopefully invited.
Yes.
So,
I would absolutely. No, you guys are 100%. I feel like I'm in the group.
Let's make it happen.
I love it. I'm so glad that I reached out to you guys.
That's right. Later, guys. Thanks again for stopping.